In boxing, knockout power gets the headlines, but the longer you watch this sport, the more you notice what happens in between those highlight moments. Footwork wins space. A jab wins time. Head movement saves faces. The best don't just hit hard. They make you miss, make you think, and make you doubt. That's what makes the build-up to Canelo Alvarez versus Terence "Bud" Crawford so intriguing. It's not simply a question of who hits harder at super middleweight. It's a question of whose style survives the bright lights of Las Vegas and the weight of history. Many fans know Crawford for his finishes, but those who watch closely will tell you the knockouts sit on top of a foundation of pure boxing. He feints opponents out of position. He changes rhythm mid-combination. He switches stances without losing balance. He can be slick, stubborn, or surgical, whatever the moment demands. That's why some seasoned voices in the game have put their chips on Bud, not as friends or business partners, but as observers who believe ring IQ travels across weight classes better than muscle alone. That said, this matchup lives at the intersection of styles and size. Canelo Alvarez is a 4-division champion, a 2-time undisputed king, and the current undisputed super middleweight champion. 63 wins, 2 losses, 2 draws, with 39 knockouts. His record is a roadmap of elite names and difficult styles. He is flat-footed by choice, not by limitation, because staying grounded lets him set traps and explode in short windows. He's mastered the art of riding with punches, taking just enough off shots to return fire with full force. He doesn't waste movement. He doesn't waste chances. If you stand in front of him for too long, you usually pay. Terence Crawford's believers point to a simple counterargument. The last fighter to truly complicate Canelo's night did it with timing, distance control, and disciplined movement. Dimitri Bivol used those tools at 175 pounds to keep Canelo disarmed. Before that, Floyd Mayweather Jr. won at 152 by refusing to give Canelo the exchanges he needed, schooling him for 12 rounds. The suggestion from Crawford supporters is obvious. Bud has the feet and the brain to do something similar at 168, with the added threat of switch hitting that can turn a right-hand opening into a southpaw trap in one step. Mike Tyson, who has spent time watching Crawford work in the gym, offered a warning that goes beyond combinations and pads. In his words, pressure in boxing isn't just being hit, it's the thought of being hit. The way a fighter manages that anticipation defines everything that follows. The walk to the ring, the first exchange, the moment a plan starts to wobble. Tyson's read on Crawford is that he is mentally primed for a war of control, aggression channeled through discipline, intensity without panic. If that's true when the doors close and the crowd fades into noise, it gives Crawford a real chance to make the fight look simpler than the oddsmakers expect. Tyson is also known to wander into bigger ideas when he talks about fighters and eras. He's mused about how people carry fragments of conquerors in their DNA, the Hannibals, the Genghis Khans, and how some personalities stay stubbornly undomesticated, built for conflict rather than comfort. He's even tossed out a prediction that our attachment to phones will eventually become literal. Technology embedded into our bodies to sharpen minds and change how we compete. Whether you agree with that or not, his point is that human nature, hunger, and adaptation never really leave the stage in this sport. When you watch a man like Crawford stare down a mountain like Canelo, you're seeing that old instinct dressed in modern technique. Training camp updates often become noise, but one development can't be dismissed. Crawford has been sparring with bigger punchers to replicate the kind of thunder Canelo carries at 168. Carlos Adams, 2411 with 18 knockouts, a powerful middleweight, has been one such partner. Clips floating online have prompted speculation, with some fans insisting Adams had his way in moments. The context matters. In those sessions, Crawford reportedly stood his ground more than usual, accepting heavy shots to calibrate timing and test pocket counters against bigger artillery. Sparring isn't a fight, but it's a lab. If you're preparing to face a naturally larger champion, there's value in feeling what your chin and your counters look like after a thud. Those snippets sparked another round of comparisons. Adams is listed around 5 feet 11 inches with a 73-inch reach. Canelo stands closer to 5 feet 7 inches with a 70-inch reach. The math doesn't guarantee anything. Canelo's compact frame helps him sit down on punches, but it reminds us that raw size on paper isn't the same thing as effective pressure in the ring. What counts on fight night is how you close distance, how you punch in between, and whether your opponent can make you take the wrong step out of habit. Not everyone thinks Crawford can thread that needle for 12 rounds. Oscar De La Hoya, both former opponent and longtime observer of Canelo, framed the fight as a collision of pressure and precision. He believes Canelo will do what he always does: walk forward behind tight defense, work the body, and raise the temperature until the other man either breaks or makes mistakes. But he also noted that the fighters who've given Canelo fits, Mayweather, Bivol, did it with defensive mastery and control of pace. If anyone in today's game can blend those ingredients with counterpunches that do damage, it's Crawford. De La Hoya's point wasn't that Canelo is vulnerable to any mover. It's that he's vulnerable to the rare mover who sees the whole ring and punishes every overreach. There's a counterpoint that keeps resurfacing in debates. Vulnerability goes both ways at higher weights. People haven't forgotten that a smaller man, Yuriorkis Gamboa, buzzed Crawford years ago at lightweight before Crawford made a brutal adjustment and ended that fight. Skeptics ask an uncomfortable question. If Gamboa could rattle Bud, then what happens when a super middleweight with Canelo's punch placement lands clean? At 175, against true light heavyweights, Canelo was rarely rattled. He lost to Bivol on points, not on durability. Does Crawford have the kind of stopping power at 168 to keep Canelo honest for 3 minutes a round? Or will Canelo walk through counters, as he has so often, and set up body shots that tax Crawford's legs over time? Sean Porter, who knows what it's like to feel a fight shift in the middle, once described getting tight in the legs against Errol Spence Jr. His father told him to stop leaning on his legs that round, adjust the plan on the fly. Porter did and found room to breathe. That lesson applies here. If Crawford's legs feel different at 168, if the bounce fades in the 5th or 7th, can he back off, reset, and win with craft? Will he trust the adjustment when his instincts scream to do the thing that worked a division below? The best do. The rest try to outmuscle fate and pay a price. This is where the Alexander-Usyk comparison comes in. When Usyk moved to heavyweight, he ignored the chorus telling him to bulk up like a classic big man. He stayed fast, stayed light on the feet, and beat Anthony Joshua with speed, angles, and clean counters. He did the same against Tyson Fury, a bigger puzzle with different rules, by refusing to imitate his opponent's strengths and doubling down on his own. Analysts who like Crawford in this fight say that's the blueprint. Don't grow into Canelo's shape. Grow sharper inside your own. Make the 168 version of everything you already do great. Force the bigger man to miss first, then make him pay. There's also the reality of career timing and opportunity. Coach Joel Diaz has talked about the financial stakes for Crawford. He has been dominant across multiple divisions, yet has rarely been the star in giant stadium events. This is the night that changes that. With Chairman Turki Alalshik taking a visible role in bringing megafights to market and the sport's biggest nights generating record revenue, Crawford stands on a stage with generational wealth attached. Diaz framed it bluntly. As a friend, as business, and as a competitor, Crawford is already winning by being here. The purse alone elevates his career. The risk, fighting the undisputed king at 168, offers the kind of reward that can move a fighter to the first line of the sport's all-time debates. Of course, moving up can be brutal. We've seen smaller champions chase glory 2 divisions north and fall short. Mikey Garcia jumped to welterweight for Errol Spence Jr. and found himself outgunned by size and sharpness. Demetrius Andrade climbed from smaller classes into a ring with a true super middleweight and looked brilliant for a few rounds before the physical grind took over. The cautionary tale is clear. Greatness doesn't guarantee a soft landing when mass and leverage are tilted against you. On the other hand, some current stars shrug at the size talk. Shakur Stevenson, one of the sport's brightest, insists Bud will cook Canelo because skills beat scales. He notes that height-wise the difference isn't dramatic, and he believes Crawford's body has already adapted to the move. He even floats the possibility, echoed by a few respected trainers, that if Canelo gets careless, Crawford could hurt him and force a stoppage. It's not a prediction everyone buys, but it's a reminder that the younger generation sees Crawford as a man capable of toppling the era's biggest star with craft rather than bulk. Then come the critics with their own receipts. They argue that outside of Errol Spence Jr., Crawford's resume lacks opponents who equal the danger level Canelo has faced and beaten across multiple divisions. Some go further, saying the version of Spence Crawford dominated was compromised by prior injuries and a brutal life outside the ring. They don't blame Crawford for that. They just hesitate to equate that win with beating an established, in-prime champion at a bigger weight. Whether you agree or not, The underlying theme is that Canelo has operated in the deep end for so long that even a tight win over him means something different than a wide win over anyone else. Mickey Bay, former lightweight champion and a clear-eyed analyst, cut through the noise by calling this a true 50-50, one of those rare fights where uncertainty is the selling point. He laid out the asymmetry in the stakes. If Crawford wins, by split decision or clean, he elevates into rare air, a pound-for-pound legacy that spans divisions in real time. If Canelo wins narrowly, the questions will linger. Is he slowing down, vulnerable to fast technicians with legs? To protect his aura, he needs not just a win, but a convincing one. Crawford, by contrast, gets credit simply for doing what so few have done, beating Canelo at 168. One recent angle has gotten a lot of attention, framed with a provocative phrase that doesn't mean what it seems. Some headlines claimed Crawford is legally cheating, not in the sense of breaking rules, but in the sense that his training camp is hitting every legal edge in sight. Sparring bigger men, optimizing conditioning, maintaining a monk-like focus, and mastering tactics designed for this opponent specifically. It's hyperbole, but it captures a real mood, that Crawford's preparation looks like a masterpiece while Canelo carries the burden of pressure that always comes for the A side. The danger of that narrative is obvious. If Canelo loses, people will say the signs were there. If he wins, those same voices will shrug and say he did what he was supposed to do. The truth will land somewhere between the two, as it usually does. For clarity, here are the facts that matter most heading into fight week. The date is set for September 13th in Las Vegas, Nevada, at Allegiant Stadium. Canelo Alvarez enters as the undisputed super middleweight champion with a record of 6-3-2-2, 39 KOs. Terence Crawford arrives with a perfect 4-1-0, 31 KOs. A two-time undisputed champion at 140 and 147 pounds. He briefly visited 154 to defeat Israil Madrimov by unanimous decision, then accepted the biggest challenge of his career at 168. He has competed primarily at welterweight since June 2018. By the time the bell rings, Crawford will be 37, turning 38 2 weeks later. Madrimov, who later lost to Virgil Ortiz Jr. for an interim belt at junior middleweight, is now 1-0-2-1, 7 KOs. A result skeptics cite to question how much weight to give Crawford's performance at 154. Supporters counter that styles make fights, not resumes, and that the Madrimov bout was a proof of concept that Bud's timing and adjustments carry north. Abel Sanchez, the renowned trainer, has remained steadfast. Weight classes exist for reasons that numbers on a scale don't fully capture. In his mind, if Crawford had taken 3 to 4 years to build strength and mass naturally into 168, his odds would increase dramatically. Compressing that process into roughly a year, he insists, will slow Crawford just enough for Canelo to dictate pace. Chris Algieri, always an honest broker, adds context. This may be a massive event, a true boxing blockbuster on a global platform, but it isn't automatically the best fight that can be made from a pure matchup standpoint. He rattles off alternatives. Canelo versus David Benavidez, a Canelo Bivol rematch, Crawford versus Jaron Boots Ennis, or Crawford versus Virgil Ortiz Jr. None of that is meant to dampen enthusiasm. It's meant to remind fans that fight hype isn't the same as fight analysis.